Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Letters to Tahira. Tahira K. Nam Khatud. By G. A. Parwez. Translated by Mrs. Suraya Alvi. Chapter 2-3. Status of Men and Women. Second letter to Tahira. This letter contains more explanation of more or less the same problems that have been mentioned in the first letter. The aim is to further emphasize the basic points. My daughter, you worry over such trivialities as to why only men have been addressed in the Quran and not women? I shall answer this question later, but I hope you will not mind it if I say something first. These anxieties manifest the inferiority complex of a woman, that her status is less than that of a man. I am surprised that you, being a student of the Quran, have been unable to expel such a non-Quranic idea from your mind. I know that centuries-old traditional beliefs do get set in people's minds and are very difficult to erase. Did you notice Aisha's father? He was a third-generation Muslim, but whenever he sneezed, involuntarily he would say Jai Nandi. Our late uncle checked him many times. And he, Aisha's father, knew it, too. That you say Alhamdulillah. Praise be to God. But he still said Jai Nandi whenever he sneezed. When Jai Nandi is in your blood, then it is difficult to expel it. Subconscious ideas. How many of such beliefs are hidden in our subconscious? The Quran tells us about the children of Israel that the love of the calf had gone down to their subconscious. 2. 93. This is what is meant by it. However, Quran claims that it treats the maladies of the hearts, 2. 57. Not referring to heart palpitation, but to the disorders of the heart or mind. However, and to speak the truth, heart palpitation is also in a way caused by the disorders of the mind. Many Western researchers have concluded that innumerable physical ailments are caused by psychological disorders, and that correct treatment is through psychological correction. Therefore, according to the Quran, it is essential that faulty ideas be erased off one's mind. Now let us turn to your question. You know that the Quran is meant for the whole of humanity. It addresses human beings first. It has come to enlighten the human race. Tell me, do human beings or human race mean men only, or does it include both men and women? Is mankind limited to men only, or does it include women, too? Masculine gender. The fact is that whenever the Quran has addressed mu'mineen, the believers, as a whole, the masculine gender has always been used. It is the general rule of usage of a language that wherever a mixed gathering is addressed, then at the beginning one addresses as ladies and gentlemen, but after this only the masculine gender is used in the next of the speech. One keeps on speaking spontaneously in masculine gender, but the speech is meant for both men and women. You have never protested that it is an insult that you have been invited to this gathering, but the speaker has talked to men only. The reason is that you accept that although the speaker has used the masculine gender only, it was inclusive of both men and women. That it is a rule of the usage of language that in a mixed gathering, the masculine gender should be used. The Quran has just followed this style. That is, wherever it has addressed the believers as a whole, it has used masculine gender, but both men and women are being referred to. To highlight the fact that men and women are both included in the group of believers, the Quran has mentioned their qualities as separate classes as well. As I have written in my first letter, see Surah Al-Ahzab 33, 35. About how men and women amongst the believers walk side by side, Muslim men and women, etc. Both these genders are used till the end of the verse. Tell me, Tahira, would you still complain that Quran has not addressed women along with men? Your second question reminds me of a joke. A man had to reach somewhere on the day for his marriage. Unfortunately, he missed the train, and there was no way that he could reach that place on the same day. He was very perplexed. In this absent-minded state, he went to the telegraph office and at once sent a telegram to his would-be wife saying, "Do not Marry till I come. You say, it is written in the Quran that men would get good women in heaven. But that it has not been told whether women would also get good men or not. Just think, Tahira, if men would get women, does that not mean that women would be getting men, too? For instance, if Hamid gets Aisha as his wife, would not Aisha be getting Hamid as her husband, too? When a husband gets a wife, then the wife gets a husband, too. As for heaven, Tahira, you must understand a fundamental truth, because without its cognizance many things remain confused. Cognizance of heaven. The Quran mentions a heaven that one would enter in the life after death. It has been explicitly stated that with the present level of your mind's perception, you cannot comprehend its dimensions. No one knows what pleasures await one, as a reward of one's good deeds. 32. 17. This heaven is not enclosed in the four walls of space. It encompasses the earth and the whole of the universe. 3. 133. Therefore, what life would be like in that heaven is beyond our comprehension. But there is another heaven. One which we create here on earth by establishing the divinely ordained system. This implies the ideal society we constitute along Quranic lines, is heavenly. The details of this heaven concern this world. Not only can we understand it, but we can also create it and live in it. This is that heaven which the Quran mentions men along with women, and that is how it should be. Could there possibly be a society made by men alone, without women? What would be the qualities of the women in an ideal society? The answer is the same qualities that women believers, Mu'minat, would have. Women of an ideal society. Women believer have been asked to be modest when they go out. To be with downcast eyes. Men have been asked the same. They should not invite unbridled gazes by being immodest. In the ideal society the Quran calls them those with modest downcast gazes. 55. 56. The Quran tells us that believing women keep their honor above everything. Men have been asked the same. In the heavenly society, it is said about them. No man, whether known to them or not, has even touched them before their husbands. 55. 56. As such, every young man who wants to marry would be quite sure of his fiancée's purity. What a mental satisfaction a prospective spouse would have, who himself would be righteous, too. These wives are called refined and of high status by the Quran. 56. 34. The Quran relates that during the era before Islam, the women used to be quite emotional and hence could not present their cases properly in disputed matters. 43. 18. But the Quranic society transformed the same woman, with proper education and training, into altogether a new being. 56. 35 to 36. She would become eloquent. This does not mean that her emotions would be eliminated. A woman is comparatively more emotional than a man, and she should remain so, since her natural duties bring her emotions into play. Proper training channelizes these emotions onto the right track, rather than them being wrongly used. They would be able to communicate and be healthy and energetic. 56. 37. What a boon it would be for those whose houses such women would grace. 56. 38. Such righteous women of superior intellect would grace the homes of men having similar qualities. After the formation of this society, the principle of family life would be, bad women for bad men and unwholesome men for unwholesome women. Righteous women for righteous men and good men for good women. 24. 26. This makes home life heavenly, and an ideal society starts with such homes. Tahira, the Quran describes this fact in a unique manner. According to it, a difference of outlook, ideas and images, beliefs, principles and way of life between a man and woman creates hell. And on the contrary, homogeneity in all these aspects makes for a harmonious home. The Quran cited the difference between mu'min, a believer in God only, and a mushrik, Sharing with others, God's domain of absolute rule. As an example, because belief in the unity of God and belief in the multiplicity of it, is the biggest difference. Heaven in a home. The Quran directs that no Momin man should ever marry a mushrik woman, and neither should a Momin woman marry a mushrik man. It also says that those admitting to such married relationships are dragging you to hell. In contrast, God invites you to heaven with a harmonious marriage where partners think alike. 221. A heaven within a home, and protection from all kinds of external mischief. Tahira, this is the position of a man and a woman in a heavenly society. Now tell me where your objection stands when you say that the Quran gives hors to men in heaven, but has not done anything for women? By the way, I should tell you that in Arabic, hor-ein means having a pure and clean intellect, and this word is used both for men and women. Therefore, the heavenly couples would be exemplary specimens of the ideal mixture of thought and deed. Imagine, my dear daughter, how satisfying and blissful that society would be when its men and women would have such qualities. 29. Also remember that, in Arabic, zawi, plural azwaj, just does not mean a wife, it means a companion. According to these meanings, a wife is a companion to her husband and a husband is a companion to his wife. So wherever the Quran mentions azwaji mutahirat, it always refers not just to righteous wives, but to righteous companions. Christianity and woman. Although no religion, in the form that these are with now, in the world has given a woman her due status, Christianity has gone to an extreme in this respect. They created this belief that Adam's wife was the cause of his expulsion from heaven. She was tempted by Satan, and then she in turn tempted Adam. Thus after this, the religion nurtured hatred against woman. Moreover, Christ's celibate life made Christians dislike women all the more. When Christianity corroborated monastic life, celibacy was considered essential for spiritual progress. It was due to these beliefs that a woman was considered the originator of all evil. This is the reason Christian clergy objects to seeing women in Quran's heaven. Firstly, the Quran rejected the idea that Adam's wife got him expelled from heaven. The Quran tells us that both Adam and his wife committed a mistake. 2:36. Later their atonement was accepted. 2:37. I do not need to write separately about the story of Adam and Eve, as you must have read about it in my book Iblis O Adam. Satan and Adam. That is not the story of a particular couple, but in it the qualities of men and women have been allegorically described. In this respect you must consider one more thing. We bitterly criticize the Hindu belief that whoever is born in a Brahmin's priestly class house commands respect by everybody, and whoever is born in a Shuddhar serving class family has to serve others all his life. We tell them that it is not the child's choice where he is born. When you do not have a choice in this respect, then it is utterly foolish to declare somebody worthy of respect or otherwise. It is quite true that the Quran completely rejected this idea and asserted that all children are equal by birth, and are equally worthy of respect. 1770. If we accept the superiority of a boy over a girl, just because of his sex, is it not the same Hindu philosophy which we otherwise reject? Just ponder, is it a girl's fault that she is born a girl and not a boy? But whether it is her fault or not, we keep on punishing her all her life. Is this Islam? I have not yet fully recovered, so I am unable to write to you in detail. I hope that in these brief thoughts, you will find satisfying answers to your questions. Remember me to Salim. I have yet to answer his letter. Peace be with you. Parwez, October, 1955. Marriage, divorce, polygamy. Third letter to Tahira. No, Tahira, there is a whole lot of difference between a child and the young one of an animal. The young one of an animal is born with instincts which training cannot change. If before it opens its eyes, a pup is made to suckle a goat, it would not be affected in any way. It will remain a dog, and grow up to be a dog. It will have all the dog traits and none of the goat. Its instincts would neither be affected by the goat's milk, nor by having been brought up with goat's kids. Why go far? Didn't you observe the results when your hen was hatching her own and the duck's eggs together? The eggs produced chicks and ducklings, and all were cared for under the wings of the hen. But when they faced water for the first time, the ducklings went straight in the water and the hen and chicks remained out. The hen's worry was worth watching, but the ducklings were quite unaware of the fact that they had done something to be worried about. On the contrary, the chicks did not go near the water. Being brought up with, and in the company of chicks had no effect on them, and neither would it be so in the future. Ducklings remain ducklings. In contrast, if an uncouth or rural woman's child is sent to a civilized and learned family, and the child from a refined family is given to a village woman, you will see that peasant's child would become a refined and civilized person, while the other child would be uncouth and become a peasant. There is no doubt there are hereditary influences, but education, training, and environmental influences can overcome these. Also, what we call hereditary influences are actually influences of society which are being transferred accumulatively, generation to generation. The effects of education and training can be seen to the extent that if a child of Shia parents is raised by Sunnis, then he will have Sunni ideas. Similarly, if a Hindu child is given to a Muslim family, he will become a Muslim. No dogmatic discussion is needed for such a phenomenon. These are everyday observations which reveal that a human child is not born ready-made, like an animal offspring, but that it becomes what his or her primary environment or education trains it for. If a nation wants its next generation to have human qualities, then it is necessary for that nation to create such an environment. A child's environment is the home where he is born and grown up. As such, his first training ground is his mother's lap. Mother's lap. In this letter I really do not want to go into details, through which I would make you understand, with examples from the conclusions of psychoanalysts, that for whatever a child will become in future, its main foundation is laid during the first 2 or 3 years of its life. Dr. Jung asserts that the foundations of a child's character are laid at a time when he has yet to learn to speak. At this age he is visually observing and absorbing the environment in which he is raised. Later the edifice of his life is erected on these foundations. Therefore, the making or marring of a child's life depends mostly upon his environment. And his environment depends upon his parents' mutual relationship. This is to say that the environment is created by how husbands and wives react to each other. Mutual relationship of husband and wife. This is the reason why the Quran considers a congruent and happy relationship of a husband and wife as a pivot of family life. This not only makes the couple's life happy, but their children's, too. Growing up in a harmonious environment, makes them a blend to be prided by their nation, and the whole of humanity benefits from them. The Quran says that a husband and wife relationship can be happy only if their attitude and temperament are compatible, and if they have the same goals in life and their thinking is alike. Such men and women are congruent in head and heart, and create a balanced and happy environment in which their children grow up into sublime exponents of humanity. In Quran's diction, this is called nikah. Nikah literally means to absorb each other in the same way as raindrops are absorbed by earth. It is a kind of amalgamation, like that of sleep in the eyes. A couple executing this kind of contract is called zawj. As mentioned in my previous letter, zawj means complement, that is, the one has to be there to complete the other one. Husband complements a wife and a wife complements a husband. If one is ignored, then the other is rendered useless. If one wheel of a carriage is damaged, the other one automatically becomes useless. Both the wheels are zawj to each other. Nikah. It is a fact that the family contract, nikah, in which both the parties are congruent head and heart-wise, ensures a heavenly environment. Incongruent parties coming together create hell. The Quran has explained this in quite an effective manner, and I have written about this point in my previous letter. It is obvious that this kind of relationship, which is based on a like mental level with shared ideas and concepts, can only be possible between two consenting parties by mutual agreement. That is why the Quran calls it a contract. 4:21. The first condition for the contract is that both the parties should be mature. Age of nikah. A minor's contract cannot be taken seriously. Therefore, nikah of a minor is not a nikah according to the Quran. The Quran associates nikah with adulthood. 4:6. The second condition of the contract is that it should be executed without coercion and should have the consent of both the parties. So, on the one hand, men are addressed as follows in 4:3. To perform nikah with those women whom you like, and on the other hand, about women, it says that it would be absolutely unlawful for you to own women forcibly. 4:19. Hence, nikah is a contract in which an adult man and an adult woman willingly agree to become companions, husband and wife, to honor all the duties and privileges enjoined by the Quran, living a life full of mutual love and shared ideas and interests. This way they will create a pleasant environment that would be conducive to our future generations in being humane and have balanced personalities. If even one point is missing or deficient, then the relationship does not become nikah and deteriorates into a simple biological sex connection. The Quran itself explains the basic difference between the two kinds of relationships when in 4:24 explains the married relationship. Quran style is quite unique, when it explains something, by discussing the opposite. It says that married relationship means musaneen and not musafahin. Here musaneen has been explained by musafahin. The root word of musafahin is safha, which means pouring out. Further, hasana means to keep oneself within certain limits. If the relationship of nikah does not limit itself to the basic restrictions on which nikah was established, then it is no longer nikah. It degenerates to safha. Arabs used to draw lots by shooting arrows, one of which was blank. This blank arrow was called asfi. In other words, even if it hit the target, it was not counted as a result. This is not the place to mention the other meanings of this verse. I hope you have understood the simile that the Quran has used. Polygamy. Let us move forward. When nikah aims at a harmonious life, and sets to create an environment for the children which would be conducive to the blossoming of their personalities, then in the presence of one wife another wife cannot be justified. Such company could convert the home into a hell, instead of developing companionship and respect. A second wife can be justified only when the first wife has died, and one is quite certain that the second wife would have an equally harmonious atmosphere. Otherwise circumstance may evolve in which the marriage contract has to be dissolved. This is called divorce, which is an issue that will be discussed in detail later. All of these, dear daughter Tahira, were the results of the above. In respect of divorce, the Quran says, if you want to bring another wife in place of your first wife. 4:20. This makes it very clear that a second wife can come in place of a first wife, and not in her presence. As I write this, I can imagine how perturbed you would be after reading this. Surely you would question how I could say such an eccentric thing, when Muslims have been assured of 4 wives. Let aside the past, even today there are many homes where a husband has more than one wife. These homes include some of the most respected families. Then how can one assert that the presence of one wife leaves no room for another one? You are right, Tahira, and so am I. You say that 4 wives at a time is the usual practice of Muslims, and I am saying that the Quran allows 1 wife at a time. Now you will ask how the practice of keeping 2, 3, or 4 wives at a time became prevalent among Muslims. Well, listen. The Quran mentions marrying more than 1 wife in one place only, and that is the 3rd verse of Surah An-Nisa. The 2nd verse of the surah is, the property of orphaned children, if they have any, should be protected like you protect your own children's property. When they attain adulthood, the trusted property should be returned to them. Do not exchange their goods with yours of lesser quality. Misappropriating their possessions would be a great injustice. 4. 2. This is Surah An-Nisa's second verse. The literal translation of the third verse is: if you are afraid that you will be unable to do justice to the orphans, then you could take in nikah 2, 3, or 4 women whom you like. 4. 3. Basic condition. One thing is quite clear from the above-mentioned verse. Taking more than one wife is conditional. And the condition is if you are afraid that you may not be able to do justice to the orphans. The question is as to what does this condition stand for? Surah An-Nisa itself infers an explanation. Early verses of the surah contain laws about women, orphans, property, and inheritance. Thereafter, laws pertaining to war are mentioned. Just imagine, a small cluster of Muslims had to fight many wars, within 7 to 8 years of migration. An obvious consequence was the diminishing number of men and the increasing number of orphans and widows. Today, we normally use the word orphan for those children whose parents are no more alive or who do not have their fathers. But in Arabic this word is used for such children, as well as for those women who have been left alone because they have been unable to get a husband. Therefore when this verse says, if you are afraid you would not be able to do justice to the orphans, it is referring to fatherless children and such women who are without husbands, whether they are widows or are unmarried. To elaborate on the issue, it may be noted that in early Medina life, owing to constant wars, and their consequence, such children and women far outnumbered men. Besides, the Muslim women from Mecca after leaving their non-Muslim husbands, sought refuge in Medina. Such circumstances had made the presence of these orphans and widows a serious social problem, which had to be solved satisfactorily. If it was a problem of everyday provisions, then many solutions could have been considered. But the real problem was how to take care of the young widows and orphaned girls. Some extraordinary solutions had to be sought, especially because they could not be married to non-Muslims. Muslim women could neither marry the infidels of Quraysh, nor Jews or Christians. These were those extraordinary conditions under which the above-mentioned guidance was given. That is, if the problem of orphans could not be solved in a manner which adequately fulfilled their rights and needs, then one solution was that one man should shoulder the responsibility of more than one woman. This was a way of saving society from all the drawbacks which would entail from having the young women and orphan children unattended. But at the same time men have been advised to make sure that this does not interfere with the balance and tranquility of their home. If it was to be so, then it would not be permitted. As such, the rest of the verse was revealed together with the above. If you are afraid that you will not be able to keep the balance, then maintain one wife only. 4. 3. This is, my dear girl, the one verse in the whole of the Quran about polygamy, and the above is its background. After this, could the way Muslims indulge in polygamy possibly be justified according to the Quran? Do you see any marriage being solemnized where the condition laid down by the Quran, if you are afraid that you will not be able to do justice to the orphans, then you can have more than one wife? 4. 3. Is being observed or adhered to. Trying to justify polygamy under cover of this verse, in ordinary circumstances and without those conditions, is nothing but the open flouting of its injunctions. If you ask somebody, he would say, that as he was childless, he married again. As if God had enjoined upon him to increase the tribe of Adam and then come to him, failing which he would be sent to hell. On the contrary, God himself has said that children are born according to the law of nature. Some get boys and some girls. Some have boys and girls both, and some remain childless. 42. 50. Some say that because their wives were perpetually ill, they married again. According to them, companionship means, as long as your partner is healthy you keep her, and the minute she is sick you throw her into hell. But such excuses, no matter how weak, are forwarded by those who think that there should be some justification for human problems. Religious-minded people do not think that any excuse is necessary. Their reply is quite clear. They say that when religion allows 4 wives, then what other excuse is needed beyond this for justification? Therefore this group behaves like this. Firstly, they marry 4 wives. After this they divorce one of them and then a new bride is brought to fill the quorum. In this way, they believe, they are accumulating the rewards of the hereafter, because they are obeying the laws about nikah and divorce, and are maintaining the limit of 4 wives, too. For such people, the Quran has said, these people want to deceive the law of God and those who adhere to it, but they do not understand that they are deceiving themselves. 2. 9. Anyway, do understand this fact again, that in the Quran there is only one verse where permission has been granted for marrying more than one wife. As I have mentioned above, this came as an emergency measure to tackle a collective problem. To decide whether such circumstances are present according to the Quran, which are the prerequisites of polygamy, is the responsibility of the society and not of individuals themselves. In conclusion, as far as the individuals are concerned, they are not permitted to marry more than one wife. Let us go a step forward. You have seen that according to the Quran, the aim of nikah is to have a life of amiable comradeship. As long as there is camaraderie, this aim is being fulfilled. The question which is then raised is, if circumstances develop where due to some reason companionship is no longer possible, then what happens? Divorce. Then what? Separation. What else? Keeping 2 conflicting elements together can only result in disruption. That is why the Quran calls the nikah a contract. This separation in Quran's diction is called a divorce. That is, being released from the restrictions of the contract. But just as the Quran has repeatedly asked that prior to making the contract, you contemplate and coolly think the overall pros and cons, in the same manner it asks you to dissolve the contract extremely thoughtfully and in a considerate manner. In the Quran, family life is so important, that all the details of dissolving this contract have been fixed. It says that if a husband and a wife have a dispute, then they should sort out their differences by mutual discussions and negotiations. However, if the differences become worse and turn sour, then Quran does not leave it to the 2 of them. Rather makes it a collective and social concern and asks the society to solve it. If you fear the husband and wife would differ, you should constitute an arbitration board that should consist of a member from the husband's family and a member from the wife's family. If these arbitrators try, in the light of God's law, to set things right, then some workable solution could be found. 4. 35. This is so because the aim is to eliminate the differences and to regularize the relationship, and not to try to sever the relationship. But if this arbitration board fails in its efforts and they conclude that the companionship cannot endure any longer, then they should present their report to the court. If they themselves have the jurisdiction or powers to give the final decision, then they would decide themselves. This contract would thus be dissolved. Here you will ask, if this is how a divorce procedure takes place according to the Quran, then what is that when a wife accidentally adds more salt to the curry and the husband cannot stand it? He just has to utter the word divorce 3 times, and the poor wife is miserably banished to her parents' house. Sometimes the husband and wife quarrel, and both agree to separate. However, the husband decides neither to divorce her nor to bring her home, and thus makes her languish by his vacillation. What about this? What else can it be, but the ridiculing of religion? The underlying sentiment in it is the same, that men are rulers over the women. They have all the powers. Women are their slaves. Men are their supervisors. As long as the despot wishes, he keeps a woman in the house. When he is angry, he turns her out. Alternatively, he lets her dangle, neither keeping her as a wife nor releasing her as a divorcee. To these dictators, a woman does not even have the option to ask as to why she is being treated so, And for which crime? 81. 9. Iddat. What happens after the divorce? They would both be allowed to choose new partners if they wished. But the woman would have to wait for a little while. The waiting period called iddat. Ordinarily this is 3 months, but if the woman is pregnant then she will have to wait till her delivery. During this waiting period, all her expenses would be borne by her ex-husband. A woman cannot marry again during the period of iddat except that, if her ex-husband regrets having divorced her, then he can marry her again during this period. This is the only prerogative which men have been given. That is, there is no waiting period. Iddat. For a man. If he wants to marry again after divorcing his wife he can, but a woman has to wait to complete the duration of iddat before she marries again. Man's prerogative. The reason is quite clear. Quran's general rule is, whatever rights men have over women, women, too, have similar rights over men. 2. 228. But during the waiting period. Iddat. The ex-husband can marry and that is the only extra privilege men have. 2. 228. If during the waiting period, or after it, both of them get married again with mutual consent, then their marital life would start again. After this, if again their relationship becomes strained and they divorce each other, then again during iddat or after it, they can still marry. This is because it was the second divorce. But after this, if they divorce each other for the third time, then they cannot marry again, neither during the waiting period nor after it. The aim of this is to keep the marriage sailing, and is not to be treated lightly. After the third divorce, this woman has to marry someone else and not her previous husband. If it so happens that the second husband, too, divorces her or if she is widowed, then there is no restriction on marrying her first husband. As I have written above, the divorce is not an individual decision. A man cannot divorce whenever he likes. It is a problem to be decided upon by the social system, or by the court. For this, just as a man has the right to resort to a law court, the woman has the same right, too. Whenever there are differences to be resolved. Just as a woman cannot bind a man forcibly to the contract of nikah, in the same manner a man, too, cannot coerce a woman to keep the same. The basic condition of nikah is companionship, which is quite contrary to coercion. If there is no companionship, then how can you keep a nikah? My dear girl, these are the laws concerning marriage and divorce according to the Quran. Do go over them and reflect. Are the woman's rights any less than the man's? Is there any scope for men to rule over and supervise women? By now you must be wondering from where, despite such clear injunctions, have we acquired what actually is happening? The answer is easy. Wherever the rest of the religion has come from, this, too, has come from the same source. Which aspect of religion tallies with Quran, for us? Why should it be surprising in respect of family life? In the earlier era of the world, society in general was matriarchal. The woman's position in a family was like a ruler. Old Arab society, too, was organized on these lines, but on their right and left the two big civilizations, namely Byzantine and Persian, were patriarchal and were governed by men. Peculiarity of Islam. Just before the advent of Islam, Arabs, too, had started accepting the influence of these civilizations and their society had started bearing the signs of man's supremacy. The advent of Islam changed altogether the complexion of the society. Here neither the man nor the woman was to govern. Here they had been portrayed equal, to walk side by side in their life. These were the Quranic laws. But later when monarchy seeped into Muslims, Byzantine, and specially the Persian civilization, was absorbed into their collective and individual lives. Man's position in society changed into that of a lord and master. This was the period when Quranic Islam was being changed into a new Islam which is prevalent amongst us till today. The laws governing our family life today belong to this new Islam, and have nothing to do with the Quran. Since this Islam is a product of kingship and priesthood, coercion is its hallmark. Mind and body are both under stress. Such an oppressive society is always seeking the proverbial lamb, like a wolf. Expecting a woman to have a dignified human status in such a society is idle thinking. This oppression has led woman to take revenge, wherever she has been given freedom. As such, companionship has been non-existent in both the old and the modern society. Neither of these were formed on Quranic lines. Society has become a victim of different kinds of excesses and discriminations. For a peaceful cohabitation, there is no other option but to reject the man-made norms and modern transgressions, and build up society from scratch, within Quranic limits. This is the way to get that long-lost paradise from which, and for which, the expelled Adam is still longing. Turning to the tales of woe of our oppressed women, you may have written these tales from your imagination, but I come across true stories from morning till evening. My dear daughter, I feel like a doctor, as whoever comes to me brings a harrowing story. Doctors perhaps learn to bear with mishaps. But you know me. What a sensitive person I happen to be, specially for women and children. The narrator goes away after telling his or somebody else's story, but I cannot sleep the whole night after hearing it. You do not know Tahira. How many innocent girls have become a burden for their parents? Because they do not have enough money to fulfill the demands of these so-called gentlemen who come to take the girls' hands in marriage. These girls do not utter a word, but the facts of their condition play havoc with them and reduce them to ashes. Repressed women. How many oppressed girls are tied with a nuptial knot, against their wishes, to wolves in lamb's clothing? Men about whom everyone knows that they have been sowing their wild oats all their lives. But these poor tongue-tied girls cannot let a word escape their lips. So many innocent girls are so hounded by our so-called civilized scoundrels, that they are driven to commit suicide. When even the last remnant of gold is snatched away from them, they are asked to go to their parents' home to get more money. If they cannot oblige, they are subjected to violence and their bones are broken. There are so many girls who are not allowed to live in their husbands' homes. Neither are they divorced. They are threatened and asked to procure a certain sum or else are condemned to live in their parents' homes. Further, there are so many sick and weak girls who have borne 4 or 5 children by the age of 20, and they do not have enough in the home to eat. They work all day, look after their children and have to bear their husband's cruelty because they are their gods on earth. There are so many homes in which they cope with poverty. But the minute the husband has a few more pennies, he starts thinking of marrying for a second time and the former wife is kicked out of the house along with her children. Going abroad is another phenomenon. Whoever goes abroad, brings back a foreign wife. The first wife is left to rot while the man is enjoying life. Is there nobody to ask them about their shamelessness on having abandoned the first family? Why shame? They tell you that the righteous law allows them. So who are you to check? This hell in our society plays havoc with the physical state of at least 60% or 70% of the girls, and they simply fizzle out of this world. I am told by the doctors every other day that the female patients who have advanced TB, but who have children in their laps, and are expecting another one. Dear Tahira, what can I say about how I feel when I hear of such instances? If a man has one daughter, he would worry only about her. But I lament over all these daughters and I do not shed these helpless tears for them, but over my own helplessness. Whenever I hear a harrowing tale, I think that the responsible person should be severely taken to task and punished. But after this tale of woe is finished, then the question arises as to what could be done under these circumstances. Except for shedding tears, we cannot do anything. This is that constant agony, Tahira, through which your uncle has to pass. Now you ask about its remedy. It cannot be remedied on an individual basis. When this kind of cancerous growth has gone so far in a society, then it cannot be treated individually. It can only be remedied by changing the entire society. This is similar to what the Quran has referred to as change this earth and the sky. Not until we change this society to a Quranic society, will there be hope of any betterment. If we can make it possible by some other means, then this Quranic assertion that no man-made law or system can take its place, would not hold. Prior to this time, under the British regime, we could not make this social revolution come true. But after the inception of Pakistan, we should have had no difficulty in implementing it. Now we can formulate our own laws, and obviously our society would behave by the provisions of the laws. Besides the law, our education system is also under our control. With appropriate education we can guide our children on the right track. This would then make them change the wrong trends in the society voluntarily. This is all in our own control. But how unfortunate that nation is, which stays sick in spite of the fact that it has cures for all its ills. But we bolt the door from within and then complain that there is no way out. This is all for now. God be with you. When is Salim hoping to come back? I am sending a letter to him through the same post as yours. Peace be with you. Parwez. August 15, 1953. Talu Islam Trust. 25B, Gulberg 2. Lahore, Pakistan. taluiislam@gmail.com